Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Stand Your Ground Studio. This is Scott. Today I have a huge one for you. It's all about the Panama Papers, and if you haven't heard about them, they just came out. This is a huge data leak that's all about the financial corruption going on in the elite circles of the world, and it touches hundreds of politicians, hundreds of thousands of companies, and could touch anybody literally on the planet. And if you've been watching my channel, you know this is exactly what I've been talking about. And it's so big, I think this is the launching pad for everything that's coming in the future. So I've mentioned how the elite are going to expose their own corruption to incite rage, chaos, and revolution. More recently, I've talked about how the financial elite of the world are going to expose themselves, and they're already putting a movie out called Money Monster. And it's basically them saying they're going to broadcast corruption to the public very soon. And how there's a whole system and the money markets are basically controlled. And I've also said that we're going to use corruption from back in the 20th century as a framing device for what's coming up right now. One of those examples was the Pentagon Papers. It's all about somebody who just couldn't stand by and watch corruption go on anymore, and they had to leak an unprecedented amount of information to the public. And that's exactly what the Panama Papers are. And it's everything I talked about, just on a whole new scale. So I'm going to go ahead and let this video play for about 1 minute and 15 seconds, and they're going to show you just how pervasive this is and how many topics this touches.
Over the past 3 years, Syria's Air Force has rained death on more than 21,000 civilians. Their bodies ripped apart by exploding barrel bombs, missiles dropped on homes, businesses, bus stops, even hospitals. These war crimes have been well documented. Not so the part played by the shadowy world of offshore finance. Behind the scenes, companies using offshore tax havens were accused of supplying fuel to the Syrian Air Force. In 2014, multiple governments, including the UK and US, issued bans on doing business with these companies. But now, a new global investigation has revealed that a Panamanian firm helped these companies operate as attacks in Syria continued. That firm, Mossack Fonseca, is a key player in a sprawling, secretive industry that the world's rich and powerful use to hide assets and skirt rules by setting up front companies in far-flung jurisdictions. More than 300 journalists trawled through millions of leaked records from Mossack Fonseca to expose an alarming list of clients involved in bribery, arms deals, tax evasion, financial fraud, and drug trafficking.
So you may have noticed the production value of that video. It's top-notch, and I'm going to say animations don't happen quickly, even when they're rushed. And I want you to note the production value of this entire presentation, of all the pages I'm going to jump through. It's not only incredibly detailed, but features a lot of artwork and clear direction. This isn't just a news story, this is a premiere of a great big event that's taking place. Jumping back to the Pentagon Papers real quick, just remember it's about somebody who couldn't hold back any longer, and it's all about exposing the lies in high places and revealing an unprecedented amount of information. Now go ahead and watch this and notice the similarities. So it's an intro to a great big presentation or a production that's being put on. And we already have Putin right on the front. So here we have how an anonymous source contacted the company. It's a group effort. They even have a behind-the-scenes video of how they put it all together. And here's all the information, the unprecedented amount of information that was leaked. They put graphics to it. The journalists compiled lists of important politicians, international criminals, and well-known professional athletes, among others. The research, All right, so for each name found, a detailed research process was initiated that posed the following questions. What is the person's role in the network of companies? Where does the money come from? Where is it going? Is this structure legal? And you say, generally speaking, an offshore company or a shell company is not illegal. However, a look through Panama Papers very quickly reveals that concealing the identities of the true company owners was the primary aim in the vast majority of cases. What this made me think of is when I was first waking up about 10 months ago, maybe. One of the movies I watched it where it really sank in that this is worldwide and we can't really track what's going on was a movie called Let's Make Money. Below, I'll post a link to it, and I'll link it to the scene where they talk all about this. And this isn't exactly new. This is just where they put it all out in plain sight. So among others, clients include criminals and members of various mafia groups. Documents also expose bribery scandals and corrupt heads of state and government. The alleged offshore companies of 12 current and former heads of state make up one of the most spectacular parts of the leak, as do the links to other leaders, to their families, closest advisors, and friends. The Panamanian law firm also counts almost 200 other politicians from around the globe among its clients, including a number of ministers. They go on to lay out just a ton of graphs and information. You can share any one of them. Get the word out, please. It's time for us to do this. So scrolling through all this information, check this out. The power players. They even lay out dossiers of a bunch of these people. And I'll just let it play. They just lay it all out there for you to explore. Everyone can join in. Who did what and how. So let's take a look. Like, they even have little cartoon caricatures. They spent a lot of time on this. This is more than just a news story. So we have former Prime Minister of Georgia, Iceland's Prime Minister, convicted former Ukraine Prime Minister, childhood friends of Russian President Putin, daughter of former Chinese Premier, and it goes on. And if you click any one of these, it brings up a dossier. Brings up all this network of connections. You click on those, it gives you more information. You can really just explore every little bit of it. So here's another story they put out there. This is like a case study of like a prime minister and a couple other people in Iceland, how they got caught and how they lay out a timeline of how it all went down. It's very lengthy. Just want to mention, they start off saying a storm is coming, alluding to the perfect storm like they do. From there, they go on a whole bunch of details about how this guy set up a shell company and he misrepresented what he knew and all these timelines, and it's very dense on information, and you can read through it as you want. So what I want to do is jump over to another page. It also laid out all this information, and it's The Naked Truth. It's on Fusion. So it's called Dirty Little Secrets, and here's their log line. It's a parallel universe for the ultra-rich and ultra-powerful, but a massive new leak has exposed their underworld. So getting a sense of what this is about. They go into a huge amount of detail on this, just like the last site. All right, so here we go. This is what I'm talking about. This is like the launch pad for what's coming. So if you're trying to get a handle on the bigger picture, what offshore even means and why it's problematic, Panama is a good place to start as any. They have this laid out for every type of audience. So even if your eyes start to glaze over looking at all these details, not knowing what it means, they hired a professional wrestler to explain it to you. And they produced this just a few days ago.
You know, I made a ton of money as a wrestler. What if I told you there was a way to hide that shit ton of money someplace else, keep it away from anyone chasing it? And here's the crazy part. Not pay taxes on any of it. It's called a shell company. A fancy lawyer will set one up for you. Now, the lawyer, he establishes the company, usually in some exotic faraway place like Nevis, or maybe the Cayman Islands, or maybe even Panama. Now, they got privacy laws in those places that protect you in case the po-po come a-snooking around and knocking. They call these countries tax havens. Now, listen up real good, y'all. Your shell company has a bank account, but your name ain't on that bank account. You're invisible. So when your lady comes looking for that extra 20 grand you made in Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in some other place like Panama or Nevis, wherever the that is.
Okay, so there you go. They've got an explanation for everyday Joe Blow that anybody can understand, and they keep right on going. All right, so this is a huge point. This is what a web of secret companies looks like, and this is everything I'm talking about. This is a data map of the intersection between clients, shareholders, companies, and corporation agents who have used Mossack Fonseca's services. It represents just over a third of all the data we have. We've chosen to show you 115,373 of the most connected entities, so you can see how, in many cases, individuals are actually related in some way. Here we go. Key point. What does that say? It tells us that the people who create shell companies through Mossack Fonseca move in similar circles, so it's a repeated theme going on. So here's a network of all the impossible connections, and it really makes me think of the financial situation going on in the markets where people have portfolios and they don't know what's in them. Something could happen in Italy one day that it affects a portfolio in New York, and we're all interconnected, and it's how it's all going to get pulled down at the same time when it's time for it to happen. Jump back into the United States of secrecy because we got to bring it back home. One quote here: just as Panama Canal is smaller than you'd think, the offshore problem is closer to us than you might realize. The U.S. has become a major hotspot for corporate secrecy. And they go on some detail about that, and kind of what I just said. Many times we don't know who our clients are, and there's a lot of entanglements, a lot of secrecy, and they really keep going with this. You can explore it on your own. Oh, so here's one example. Watch how easy it is to start an anonymous shell company for your cat. Okay, so I want to jump over to CNN real quick and further my point. This article right here, The Panama Papers and America's Problem, like I've been saying, this is coming home to America, but also this is the beginning of a much larger story. So he starts off with a recap of everything I've told you, but here we go. Firms in the United States play the same role as Mossack Fonseca, possibly on a larger scale, and they are doing so with the tacit blessing of our lax financial secrecy laws. In fact, a recent study by the Tax Justice Network found that the United States is the third biggest offender in the world when it comes to facilitating financial secrecy and tax evasion. An example in history, the Enron Corporation infamously used shell corporations to conceal its mounting debt to make it look like it was more profitable than it actually was. You know how that turned out. And then right here, all of this adds up to it's yet another reminder to working families that dutifully pay their taxes that laws are not written for them. In other words, you're being systematically screwed. How do you feel about that? Jumping over to this article, it mentions how the elite of the world are predictably denying these accusations. However, it does bring up another point. These papers aren't just going to merely prove everything that they're saying and then that's it, it's over. That would be a little bit strange. This is going to bring up the beginning of a much larger conversation, a much larger argument, which is going to have more than two sides. Because like I've said before, it's all about the issue. If we all start talking about it, we all start arguing, we start thinking about it more, and it starts becoming more regular in our world. And on that note, we have an article over here telling you to ignore anyone who tries to downplay all of this, that the Panama Papers are a really big deal. It says this: some will try to downplay it, to dismiss it, to tell you it's a big misunderstanding. They will say it's a tempest in a teapot, or perhaps a grand conspiracy, but don't believe it. The release of the Panama Papers is a very big deal. She goes on to say, this is an earthquake. The aftershocks will continue for months, even years to come. It could also be the beginning of the end of secrets. And somehow they always say exactly what I expect them to say. She goes on to say this type of corruption is dangerous to all types of government and societies. The documents detail potential malfeasance in democracies, autocracies, and dictatorships alike, and powerful people around the world are no doubt breaking out in a cold sweat. So again, this is that circle of people that all know each other, and they're in all types of government. Still, this avalanche of information will probably in many cases prove damning and consequential, and it will not exactly come as a shock. Instead, the release of these papers will confirm many suspicions. Again, this is all stuff we all kind of know about, we all in some way expect, it just needs to be brought up, and we need to be handed an enemy. And I just want to end on this note. Going forward, you're going to start to see a lot of headlines saying the elite are scared, they're losing control, and it's time for us to attack, and don't buy into it because it's not true. And whether it's just a headline or someone's really trying to get you to believe it, this is the bait at the end of the hook. They want you to think they're on the run and afraid. This is the bad guy I've been talking about. They could have collapsed the system years ago, but it's not good enough to do that. They're prepping everybody in their minds and their hearts to see everything fall away at once, so there's nothing left. Yeah, they'll take down the bad guy, but they won't have anything left to believe in, and will only have one direction forward, and they'll have to accept whatever's given to them. And whatever your belief system is, I'll say it. There's only one truth in the world, and that's Jesus Christ. He's the only way. You may not believe in it, and you may need to keep researching this, and I'm going to keep putting up as much information as I can. But whatever you do, don't believe in this false enemy we need to attack. This is a part of the snare. And that's what I'll end on. Please dig into this all you want. Don't get too lost in the details, because there's always going to be more. keep to the broad strokes and know that they're doing this on purpose. Post any questions or comments below. Let me know how you feel about it, and I can't wait to hear from you. If you haven't already, please share this video and subscribe. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you next time.